Hello, I'm going to be talking about how to play loudly and softly in all three registers on the flute. Just going to make some general points to begin with. When you're playing around the same kind of dynamic in all three registers, your embouchure will change, but not as much as when you're playing with different dynamics. You need to try and get the timbre similar in the three registers. So to do that, as far as possible, the muscles around your lips should stay in basically the same shape. You focus on the inner muscles, the ones that relate to the aperture hole. You focus on the size and shape in order to create the loud and soft effects, basically. Another general point is you should always strive to create a clear, focused tone. So that means in all registers, the aperture hole needs to be small. It does change shape a bit, but focus on making it small and focused. The other thing to guard against is not to turn in, because when you turn in, your sound will go flat. It might sound louder to you, but it's just an illusion. The sound's just bouncing back at you. It sounds a bit dead as well, actually. It's not good. So try not to turn in, because that is a temptation. You will think that it sounds louder, but it doesn't. And then also, if you do not have sufficient support from your diaphragm and you do not breathe properly, you can't increase the airspeed. So you won't be able to play loudly or softly without compromising on the quality of tone anyway. It's relatively easy to play piano without support, like I did on the bottom register. You need to engage your tummy muscles, otherwise the sound, you won't be able to do anything really with the dynamics. I'm going to start off with forte in the low register and piano in the high register, because they are the two most difficult areas. Forte in the low register, okay. Your jaw needs to go back, needs to go back like that. Your jaw can go backwards and forwards, but it needs to go back for the low register and drop slightly. The aperture hole is more elliptical in shape, so it's a bit wider. It's still small though, and like I said before, don't be tempted to turn in. Your top lip angles the air downwards into the flute, and the direction of the air is as low as possible. The air's warm, and there's lots of it. Make it travel fast, downwards. Aim the air down to your elbow. Some people think about making the corners of the mouth turn downwards. You'll get a better result if you create some space in your mouth and your throat. So say "ah" and then keep that shape and blow. And that will increase the resonance it'll create more room in your mouth. Piano in the high register. Keep the air cool. Think about creating a very, very small, round aperture hole. And the angle of the air is upwards and the jaw is forward. So instead of that, it's that. Think of a very thin stream of cold air going upwards. But guard against tightening the lips, okay? A lot of people try and tighten the lips in order to get the top note. It doesn't sound good if you tighten up. So try not to tighten up anywhere, actually. Most of all, you're focusing on making a very small, round aperture hole and engaging your diaphragm muscles and supporting the sound. When you're playing in top register and you're trying to play softly, as I said, you increase the airspeed for forte, so you might think that you reduce the airspeed for piano. It's not a good idea to think like that, because because it will affect your support of the sound. So don't think like that, don't think about that. And the other thing is be very, very aware of the fact that you might tense up because you're trying too hard. So try and keep everything reasonably relaxed but engaged. Well, engaged rather than relaxed or tense. So you know, engaged is sort of in the middle of those two extremes. Forte in the high register, let's move on to that. The aperture hole is slightly larger to accommodate a larger quantity of breath, and the airstream is still high, but not as high as when playing piano, because otherwise you will be sharp. So you need to bring your jaw back very, very slightly so the airstream is lowered, and you'll need to experiment to see how low you can angle the air. When you're playing MF in the middle register, you're blowing straight ahead really, so if you want to play forte, you angle the air slightly lower, which means that the jaw will go back slightly, very slightly, to accommodate the larger quantity of air. And then when you're playing piano, you push it forward so it's slightly above the horizontal, the direction of the air. This leaves piano in the low register, so it's fairly easy to achieve. The air is directed downwards still, but the aperture hole is slightly smaller and the volume of air is lowered. Be careful, because if you don't have that support behind the sound, it will sound like this sort of... It still needs that support behind the sound, that oomph. And if it hasn't got any edge to it, then there's something wrong with it. If it sounds like ooh, like an owl, then that's not right. Do not sound like an owl. Right. So in summary, when you're playing forte, you have to push a larger quantity of air into the flute. To do that, you need a wider aperture hole, although it still must be pretty small. And you also aim the airstream more downwards. When playing piano, you create a smaller aperture hole, it's rounder and smaller, and you aim the air upwards more, and you think of cold air. How you alter the aperture hole and the angle of the air and how much you alter it, that depends on what register you're playing in. And also, it depends on your lip shape, your jaw structure, your facial structure. I mean, everyone has different lips and jawline and everything, so you will have to experiment with that. When you're thinking about playing softly and loudly, I think it's a good idea to think about piano as a feeling. It's not just quiet, it's soft. And when you're playing forte, it's not just loud, it's strong. I think that's helpful in the music when you're interpreting it. It's likely that if you have problems with creating forte and piano in all three registers, that there might be other things that are not quite working optimally for you. For example, you may not be using diaphragm support. So the sound is a little bit weak. It's more like sort of... There's not really an oomph. You know, you need to make an effort from your diaphragm. There are some exercises you can practice in order to help you realise how to push. The first thing that you need to do, of course, is to make sure that when you breathe in, your tummy goes out, and then when you breathe out, your tummy goes in. Because if you don't do that, then that muscle can't engage anyway. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you can actually try going ha, 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 ha. You can just play and then put the tongue in front and see if it sounds the same. If it doesn't sound the same, that's because the support isn't there. So that's the first exercise I usually get people to do, because then they can feel the kick in their diaphragm. Then another thing you can do is you can play legato scales, piano, with your knees bent. So and that should engage your diaphragm muscles so you can feel them. If not, try sitting down with your legs raised. Okay, right, other things you can do, other resources. Well, obviously a tuner, because you will go out of tune when you play forte and piano if you're not careful. So you need to check that. What you could do is just play forte notes in each register and then see if they're sharp, and then play piano notes and see if they're flat, you know, and then mezzo forte, you know, check them in each register and see what the tuner says. Don't get too hung up on the tuner, it can drive you absolutely mad because it's so sensitive, but I think it's really useful, you know, to check up on every now and again. This is the book for you, De La Sonority. Well, it's a book for everyone really. It's got lots of good exercises in it. There are 2 exercises in this book that are particularly good. This is probably one of the most effective. It's called Un de son and it's on page 23. What you do is you play a note from pianissimo to piano. Then you take a breath and you come in on the dynamic you left it on, which is piano. And then you play it and gradually crescendo again to MF. So you get the idea. You take a breath, come in MF again. So the idea is that you work on your whole dynamic range that way without being restricted by breath. And there are some groups of notes underneath that you can go on to after you finish that exercise, and some instructions as well. Really good exercise for expanding your range. There's also on page 10, Souplesse du son grave, which is you set your metronome to 60, to the crotchet, and you have a go at these. Now these are very taxing. I would recommend you didn't practice them with vibrato. Well, practice them both ways. Practice them with vibrato and without vibrato. Mainly without. The vibrato covers up an awful lot of sins. Another brilliant book, Tone Development Through Interpretation. Now this is actually divided into sections related to dynamic levels. So you've got the low register, for example, starts off in the quiet zone, and then you go into the loud zone, and then you've got a mix, and you've got the high register. So you've got all these tunes in the book. This is just the index, so the tunes are here. So I'll show you an example. They're all nice, and most of them are from the orchestral repertoire. Obviously it's a little bit more sophisticated than just forte and just piano, you know, because they're tunes, so you need to vary it. But the idea is that you play the tune within a certain volume range. So pianissimo to piano, or pianissimo to MP, pianissimo to MP, and then you'd be playing from MF to fortissimo maybe for another piece. And you need to control that and make it sound beautiful in the piece. Those are really good resources for you, so hopefully that'll help. So that basically concludes my video, except to say that anyone can blow loudly and softly. The question is whether you can actually hear that you're going out of tune. The flute has lots of notes on it that are out of tune. Now, if you can't correct those because you can't hear them, then that is a problem. So you do need to address your general musicianship skills. Now that means lots of listening, going to concerts, singing in choirs, just playing lots of things, being exposed to different types of music. It means having a musical life. So don't neglect all those other general musicianship skills, because they all contribute to the process we call audiation, which is the internalization of the music, and a little bit like relationship, audiation of music, a bit like the relationship between thought and language. So it's the internalization of the music, and you need to actually develop that skill to become a good musician and to learn how to recognise things even in your playing, never mind correct them. Okay, so bye for now.